Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if this is your first time here, welcome. This is Essential Patience and I am Patience. In today's video, I'll be going through 10 steps to build your own emergency fund. Emergency funds are very critical to have financial stability. It is one of the most basic things you need to support your entire financial future. But before we get into all of that, what is an emergency fund? According to Investopedia, an emergency fund is a financial safety net for future mishaps and or unexpected expenses. I am sure that we have all experienced an emergency situation where we needed quick cash, and sometimes the difference between having it and not having it might be debt. Especially after the recent pandemic, it is more important than ever to build an emergency fund. Let us get into these 10 steps. The first step is to assess your financial situation and make your goals. So an emergency fund is a goal, and if you want to build it, you should make the goal of building an emergency fund and assessing, what is my financial situation? What does that look like for me in the next few years? Also, think of situations that might come up that you would need an emergency fund for. An important thing is to not make your emergency fund a fund for anything else. So if I'm looking to buy a house, my emergency fund isn't for the house. So take a step back and assess what plans you have and where an emergency fund fits in. Step 2 is to quickly gather $1,000 as an initial starting emergency fund. Research shows that most American households cannot cover $1,000 emergency. Many times when these unfortunate events occur, it means that many people have to go into debt in order to pay it off. Having $1,000 may not seem like a lot. You have to start from somewhere. $1,000 is not the end, it's the beginning. You get this together whilst you work on other more urgent goals. An urgent goal might be paying off debt. You want to keep an emergency fund whilst you pay off as much debt as you want to, just so that you don't get slipped back into debt when an emergency come out. But you don't want to keep too much money in your savings account while you have a lot of debt to pay off. Just start with $1,000, save that up, move on to like paying off any debt you have. This is like the Dave Ramsey plan, which I definitely agree with. I think that is a good thing for most people. This is especially true if you are a single person. If you have a family, maybe you want to do $2,000 instead because it's like more people. However, you don't want to be keeping way too much money in your savings while you have a ton of debt to pay off. Step 3 is to make a budget if you don't already have one. And if you have one, revisit it, update it if it's needed. The reason why this is important is that most financial advisors recommend that you have 3 to 6 months emergency fund. Well, how can you save up for 3 to 6 months if you don't know how much your monthly expenses are? So go into your budget, assess it, make it as up to date. So let's say, for example, I spend a total of $2,500 per month. What is my comfort level for how many months I would like to feel secure in case something happens? This is different for everyone. It can depend on, are you in school? Do you have a family? What kind of job situation are you in? And are you in a field that is in demand, that if you lost your job today, you can almost guarantee that you will get a job within the next like 2-3 months? And with that, you can decide how many months of expenses should you account for that you would feel comfortable with. I feel comfortable with 6 months, but whichever one works for you is what you should go with. Let's hit a disclaimer. Disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor. I am just a girl on YouTube who makes videos because I am passionate about personal finance and financial literacy. Please do not take my word as the gospel. Do your own research and just hopefully use this as a guideline. I'm just really passionate about personal finance and financial literacy, so I've learned a lot and I'm just sharing what I know. But again, I am not a financial advisor. Please do your research, and this is mostly for entertainment and learning purposes. Always do your own research. End of disclaimer. Now that we've all heard that disclaimer, let's continue. I would caution you on putting way too much money in your emergency fund, especially if it's like in a checking account or a high yield savings account. You don't want to have like a 2-year emergency fund. I mean, is that really necessary? I don't think the average person needs 2 years emergency fund. But then again, do you? An easy way to cut down on the amount of money you need to save for your emergency fund is to cut down on your expenses. So for example, if I am spending $3,000 a month and I want to have an emergency fund for 3 months, that's $9,000 I have to save up. However, if I just cut down my expenses to $2,000, it means that now instead of saving $9,000, save up $6,000. I will caution you on cutting costs to an unrealistic amount. And remember to add all the categories. You don't want to make an emergency fund that just consists of your rent. Well, let's say you lose your job. Is rent the only thing you have to pay? It's good you have your rent covered, but how about utility? How about paying for insurance, transportation? All these things should be part of your emergency fund. So make sure that you're including all these categories into your monthly expenses and just multiply by the amount of months you need to and start building there. This leads me to number 4, which is cut out expenses that are unnecessary. This does not only lower the amount of your monthly expenses to build your emergency fund, but it also puts more money in your pocket to build and contribute towards your emergency fund. Some easy things to cut out are subscriptions that you don't use anymore, or if you have like too many subscriptions, maybe you want to take it one at a time. You may also want to start cooking at home more often. Finding different ways that is creative to use your time to save you money. But you know you best, so cut it in an area that you know is sustainable, and this would really help set you up. Going into number 5 is to ensure that your emergency fund is comprehensive and you have a goal amount. Saving to be saving and just like throwing money into emergency fund, there is no end goal to that if you don't have an amount in the end. So how would you know when it's enough? When you get to this step, you are having an amount in mind and see that, okay, when I hit this amount, I am stopping and I'm going to start putting money towards something else. And it's really a good way to set your mind on a goal and to see that amount decrease. So let's say your emergency fund is $10,000. When you're putting in money, even if it's like $100 a week or $500 here, you see that amount like become more real. It has a lot to do with psychological thinking, and it would bring you so much joy just seeing how close you are to your goal. So make sure that again you look at every category in your life, whether that is food, going out, vacations, splurge savings, your housing costs, transportation. Put that all together, find out what your monthly expenses are, and then multiply by the amount of months you are comfortable with, and that would be the amount you want to save for. But don't just be putting money towards an emergency fund that you don't know how much you need. Number 6 is to put money consistently. Contribute from every paycheck, whether it's a monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, so you don't forget about it. Once you finish your $1,000 immediate emergency, like you can budget it into your paycheck. Every paycheck, I'm gonna take $200 and put towards my emergency fund. Most people can't just pull up with $10,000, $15,000 and just be like, hey, this is my emergency fund, just by like thinking about it. So if you're like, hey, I want to start an emergency fund today, it's gonna take a while to build it up. If you don't have an emergency fund today and you decide, okay, I need to start one, I'm going to start one, well, it's not gonna happen like today, tomorrow, or even probably next month for most of us. A lot of people have other bills to pay, and since you're saving up this money, it's gonna take time. Sometimes it may even take years depending on your income and your expenses. Just know that it is okay not to have all the amounts at once. Building it up one by one, step by step, is okay. It helps train you to really understand your expenses, why you're doing this, and how to appreciate yourself when you get to that goal. Number 7 is to boost up your savings with bonuses and refund checks. While most people don't have an excess of hundreds or even thousands of dollars in each paycheck that is not going directly towards the expenses, people end up buying a ton of things with it or shopping impulsively. But what if you can put it into your emergency fund and help boost it so you don't need as much month to month, or it shrinks the time span you have on completing your emergency fund? An example is your goal is to save up $10,000 for an emergency fund. You're only able to afford about $200 every other week. At this rate, it's going to take you over a year to complete it. But let's say then you get a refund check for $2,000. Well, if you put that in there, that cuts your time shorter. And let's say that year you also do very well and you get a $3,000 bonus check from your job, and all of a sudden you have $5,000. You no longer have to wait over a year to complete your emergency fund. You can complete it within that year. So utilize any big lump sum of money that comes into your life, be it a refund check, a relocation bonus, a regular bonus, a signing bonus, whatever it is. this, use it to your advantage. Number 8 is to save it in a separate account from your checking. A good practice is to open a high yield savings account just for your emergency fund. You don't want that money mixing with any other funds you have or any other spending money, because it's a lot of money most of the time when you're done, and it's easy to tap into and to spend it. What you want to do is open up a high yield savings account, save that money in there, and you're getting a little bit of interest just so you're not losing too much value on the money. I believe that you can also divide up your emergency fund so you can save some in a high yield savings account and another in a taxable brokerage account. This option is not for everyone, but if you're in a stable job, you're really good with your finances, everything is practically going good, I think there's nothing wrong with, if you're having a 6-month emergency fund, keeping 3 months in an accessible high yield savings account and keeping the other 3 months in a taxable brokerage account. And that's if you feel comfortable with it. If you don't, you can keep all your money in a savings account, but don't put all of it into a taxable brokerage account, because you're gonna have to be able to access that money in case you need it now. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about living expenses. It can also be like owning a house and your air condition breaks down. Well, you need to be able to access that money and pay for it. So find a secure place to keep your emergency fund and make sure that at least some of the funds are easily accessible. Number 9 is not to give into the scarcity mindset and to oversave. Know that money comes in abundance. If you have good faith in yourself and you're working hard, no matter what happens in life, a lot of us have the ability to overcome. So no matter if you're in a recession, an economic crisis, or something else is going on, don't let that fear get into you and influence your decisions on your emergency fund. It would not be helpful for you to neglect your other goals just so that you can pile up a bunch of money for an emergency fund. You still have to live your life. If you need to go on vacation, you have savings for vacation, go on a vacation. If you want to start a business, you have that money, start a business, but don't neglect all those things just so you can save a ton of money for an emergency fund. Because the truth is, most people will not have the ability to save for the worst things that can happen. So what we do is that we pray for the best and save something in case something bad goes on, but just make sure that that fear does not impact you. I want to do a 2-year emergency fund. That's a bit excessive, in my opinion. And concluding at number 10 is to make sure you replenish your emergency fund after you deplete it in the future, or if your lifestyle and expenses change. One mistake we do is not revisiting our budgets and seeing, well, have my expenses changed? Maybe I used to spend $3,000 a month for total expenses, but now that I'm married with children, my expenses are $5,000 a month. Then an emergency fund that is maybe $15,000 you saved back in the day for a 5-month emergency fund is no longer sufficient, because now you have a family and $5,000 is your monthly expense. That $15,000 is not a 5-month emergency fund. It's not a 3-month emergency fund. Are you comfortable with that? Maybe you will say, now that I have children, I feel more comfortable with a 6-month emergency fund, which means that you need to save another $15,000 to make that a sufficient 6-month emergency fund. But maybe it's not a lifestyle change. Maybe I broke my computer and I needed one immediately. So I buy a computer and now my emergency fund is no longer $10,000. I spent $2,000 to buy the computer and now I have $8,000. The best thing to do is to go ahead and start replenishing that emergency fund. Because if you keep depleting it and not replenishing it, like that money's not going to replenish itself. It's not like once you hit $30,000, it's always going to stay at $30,000. No, you know, once you take that money out, it's gonna deplete, which means you have to fill it back up. So let's say you had completed your emergency fund, but you have to withdraw it to fix your air condition. Now all of a sudden you have fixed your air condition, but your emergency fund is not what it used to be. You need to reassess your budget and start putting money towards your emergency fund to build it back up. And with that, I'm going to conclude this video. I hope it was helpful. Like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know if this was helpful for you in the comment section. And remember to ring that notification bell so you will get a notification every time I post a new video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!